So yeah, you didn't hear the first part of that. I didn't hear the first part of that. Appropriate that we'd start off with trivia about English royalty. What is that? Why am I getting an extra buzz? Is my filter doing this? I don't know. Of course, it's not picking me up entirely either. Microphone problems. What are you gonna do? But anyway, if you saw what I posted, I'm going to try to get through 3 stories tonight. It's 3 of them all by the same author, about the same main character, so it just makes sense to try to get through all of them. Right. Okay. Since I did the 3-minute ads at the start, should have an hour before the other ads. Should. And since I don't have an actual mod myself, I will try to keep an eye out for the ads, and try to get things paused if we're still in the story. If we're not, I apologize. And I don't know if I want to start the stories early. So I do try to give people a chance to get here. Not miss any of the story. Like it just. I'm listening to my stream in other windows. Distracting. I wonder why browsers Chrome tends to mute things out the most. And I'm using newer phone for model capture right now. Hopefully it won't act up. For some reason it doesn't want to work as well as focus on what I'm doing. Hey, Guilty, congrats on first. Yeah. Okay, the model didn't even track my yawn. That worries me. I have my mouth open all the way. You'd think the model. Oh. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the study. It's still a little early. But, you know, just waiting for people to get here. I don't want people to miss the stories. Why is it making me smaller? Again, my model tracking isn't keeping my yawns. It's something. Should say. I may go ahead and start the stories. Now, these stories are, as I posted on Twitter, the Sorceress of Strand. It's O.T. Meade and Robert Eustace. But there are 3 stories. The first story, Madame Sara. Everyone in trade, and a good many who are not, heard of Werner's agency, of Solvency Inquiry Agency of the British Trade. Its business is to know the financial condition of the wholesale and retail firms, from Rothschild to the smallest sweetstuff shop in Whitekins. I do not say that every firm figures on its books, but methods of secret inquiry, it can discover the status of any firm or individual. It is this great safeguard of British trade that prevents much fraudulent dealings. Of this agency, I, Dixon Dukes, was appointed the manager. Since then, I have met queer people and seen strange sights, for men do curious things for money in this world. Like portraying the wolf online. It so happened that in June of 1899, my business took me to Madeira on an inquiry of some importance. I left the island on the 14th of the month by the Norham Castle for Southampton. I got on board after dinner. It was a lovely night, and the strains of the band in the public garden of Fouchot came floating across the star-powdered bay through the warm, balmy air. Then the engine bells rang to full speed ahead, and flinging a farewell to the fairest island on earth, I turned to the smoking room in order to light my cheroot. Do you have a match, sir? The voice came from a slender, young-looking man who stood near the taffrail. Before I could reply, he had struck one and held it out to me. "Excuse me," he said, and he tossed it overboard. "But surely I am addressing Mr. Dixon Reeves." "You are, sir," I said, glancing keenly back at him. "But you have me at an advantage." "Don't you know me?" he responded. "Jack Selby, Hayward's House, Harrow, 1879. "By Jove, so it is!" I cried. Our hands met in the warm clasp, and a moment later I found myself sitting close to my old friend, who had fagged for me in the bygone days, but whom I had not seen from the moment when I said goodbye to the hill grey mist of a December morning 20 years ago. He was a boy of 14 then, but nevertheless I recognized him. His face had bronzed and good-looking, his features refined. As a boy, Selby had been noted for his grace, his well-shaped head, and his clean-cut features. These characteristics still were his, and although it was now slightly past his first youth, he was decidedly handsome. He gave me a quick sketch of his memory. "My father left me plenty of money," he said, "and the Meadows, our old family place, is now mine. I have a taste for natural history. That taste took me 2 years to South America, and I had a strange share of adventures, and have collected valuable specimens and trophies. I'm now on my way home to Para, through the Amazon, having come by a boat in Madeira and changed there to Cato Line. But why all this talk about myself?" He added, bringing his deck chair a little closer to mine. "What about your history, old chap? Are you settled down with a wife and kiddies of your own? Or is that dream of your school days fulfilled? And are you the owner of the best private laboratory in London?" "As to the library," I said, with a smile, "you must come and see it. For the rest, I am unmarried. Are you?" "I was married the day before I left Para, and my wife is on board with me." "Capital," answered. "Let me hear all about it." "You shall. Her maiden name was Dallas, Beatrice Dallas. She is just 20 now. Her father is an Englishman and her mother a Spaniard. Neither parent is living. She has an elder sister, Edith, nearly 30 years of age, unmarried, who is also on board with us. There's also a stepbrother, considerably older than either Edith or Beatrice. I met my wife last year in Para and fell in love at once. I'm the happiest man on earth. It goes without saying that I think her beautiful, but she is also very well off. The story of her wealth is a curious one. Her uncle on her mother's side was an extremely wealthy Spaniard who made an enormous fortune in Brazil out of the diamonds and minerals. He owned several mines. But it was supposed to be his wealth turned his brain. At any rate, it seems to have done as far as the disposal of his money went. He divided the yearly profits and interest between his nephew and his 2 nieces, but declared that the property itself should never be split up. He has left the whole of it to one of the 3 who should survive the others. Perfectly insane arrangement, but not, I believe, unprecedented in Brazil." "Very insane," I echoed. "What is he worth?" "Over 2 million sterling. "By Jove, what a sum! But what about the half-brother?" "He must be over 40 years of age, and evidently a bad lot. I've never seen him. His sisters won't speak to him and have anything to do with him. I understand that he is a great gambler. I'm further told that he is at present in England, and there's a certain technicalities to be gone through before the girls can fully enjoy their incomes. One of the first things I must do when I get home is to find out him. He has to sign a few papers, for we shan't be able to put straight out until we get his whereabouts. Some time ago my wife and Edith heard that he was ill, but dead or alive we must know all about him as quickly as possible." I made no answer. He continued. "I'll introduce you to my wife and sister-in-law tomorrow. Beatrice is quite a child compared to Edith, who acts towards her almost like a mother. He is a little beauty, so fresh, so round and young-looking. But Edith is handsome too, although I sometimes think she is as vain as a peacock. By the way, Drees, this brings me to another part of my story. The sisters have an acquaintance on board, one of the most remarkable women I have ever met. She goes by the name of Madame Sara, and knows London well. In fact, she confesses to having a shop in Strand. What she has been doing in Brazil I do not know, for she keeps all her affairs strictly private. But you will be amazed when I tell you what her calling is. What? I asked. A professional beautifier. She claims the privilege of restoring youth to those who consult her. She only declares that she can make some quite ugly people handsome. There's no doubt that she is very clever. She knows a little bit of everything and has wonderful recipes with regard to medicine, surgery, and dentistry. She's a most lovely woman herself, very fair with blue eyes, an innocent, childlike manner, and quantities of rippling gold hair. She openly confesses that she is very much older than she appears. She looks almost 55 and 20. She seems to have traveled all over the world and says that by birth she is a mixture of Indian and Italian, her father having been Italian and her mother an Indian. Accompanying her is an Arab, a handsome, picturesque sort of fellow, who gives her the most absolute devotion, and she is also bringing back to England 2 Brazilians from Para. This woman deals in all sorts of curious secrets, but principally in cosmetics. Her shop is in the Strand, could, I fancy, tell many a strange history. Her clients go there, and she does what is necessary for them. It is a fact that she occasionally performs small surgical operations, and there is not a dentist in London who can vie with her. She confesses quite naively that she holds some secrets for making false teeth cling to the palate so that no one knows of it. Edith Dallas is devoted to her. In fact, her adoration amounts to idolatry. You give a very brilliant account of this woman, I said. You must introduce me tomorrow. I will, answered Jack with a smile. I should like your opinion of her. I am right glad I have met you, Druce. It is old times. When we meet up in London, I mean to put up at my townhouse at Eaton Square for the remainder of the season. The meadow shall be refurnished, and B and I will take up our quarters sometime in August. Then you must come and see us. But I'm afraid before I give myself up to mere pleasure, I must find that precious brother-in-law, Henry Joachim Silva. If you have any difficulty, apply to me, he said. I can put at your disposal, in an official way, of course, agents who would almost find any man in England, dead or alive. Then I proceeded to give Shelby a sort account of my own business. Thanks, he said presently. That is capital. You are the very man we want. The next morning after breakfast, Jack introduced me to his wife and sister-in-law. They were both foreign-looking, but very handsome. The wife in particular had a graceful and uncommon appearance. We'd been chatting about 5 minutes when I saw coming down the deck a slight, rather small woman, wearing a big sun hat. "Ah, madam," cried Sylvie, "here you are. I had the luck to meet an old friend on board, Mr. Dixon Druce, and I've been telling him all about you. I should like you to know each other. Druce, this lady is Madame Sara, of whom I have spoken to you. Mr. Dixon Druce, Madame Sara." She bowed gracefully and then looked at me earnestly. I'd seldom seen a more lovely woman. By her side, both Mrs. Selby and her sister seemed to fade into insignificance. Her complexion was almost dazzlingly fair, her face refined in expression, her eyes penetrating, clever, and yet with the innocent, frank gaze of a child. Her dress was very simple. She looked altogether like a young, fresh, and natural girl. As we sat chatting lightly about the commonplace topics, I instinctively felt that she took an interest in me even greater than that might be evinced from the ordinary introduction. By slow degrees, she so turned the conversation as to leave Selby and his wife and sister out, and then they moved away as she came a little nearer, said in a low voice, "I'm very glad we have met, and yet how odd this meeting is. Was it really accidental?" I cannot understand you, I answered. I know who you are, she said lightly. You are the manager of Werner's agency. His business is to know the private affairs of those people who would rather keep their own secrets. Now, Mr. Truce, I'm going to be absolutely frank with you. I own a small shop in the Strand. It is a perfumery shop. Behind those innocent-looking doors, I conduct the business which brings me to the realm. Have you, Mr. Truce, any objection to my continuing to make a livelihood? Perfectly innocent ways. None whatsoever, I answered. You puzzle me by alluding to the subject. I want you to pay my shop a visit when you come to London. I've been away for 3 or 4 months. I do wonders for my clients, and they pay me largely for my services. I hold some perfectly innocent secrets which I cannot confide in anybody. I've obtained them partly from the Indians and partly from the natives of Brazil. I have lately been to Para to inquire into certain methods by which my trade may be improved. And your trade is? I said, looking at her with amusement and some surprise. I am a beautifier, she said lightly. She looked at me with a smile. You don't want me yet, Mr. Truce, but the time may come when even you will wish to back my infirmities of years. In the meantime, can you guess my age? I will not hazard a guess, I answered. And I will not tell you. Let it remain a secret. Meanwhile, understand that my calling is quite an open one, and I do hold secrets. I should advise you, Mr. Truce, even in a professional capacity, not to interfere with them. Is anyone else hearing a buzz when I'm talking? I'm not sure what it is, but it's just like a low buzz. The childlike expression faded from her face as she uttered the last words. There seemed to ring a sort of challenge in her tone. She turned away after a few moments, and I rejoined my friends. Have you been making acquaintance with Madame Sara, Mr. Truce? Said Mrs. Selby. Don't you think she is lovely? She is one of the most beautiful women I have ever seen, but there seems to be a mystery about it. There is indeed, said Edith Dallas bravely. She asked me if I could guess her age, I continued. I did not try, but surely she cannot be more than 25. No one knows her age, said Miss Shelby, but I will tell you a curious fact which perhaps you will not believe. She was a bridesmaid at my mother's wedding 30 years ago. She declares that she never changes, and she has no fear of old age. Thanks for that, Rick. You mean that seriously? I cried. Surely that is impossible. Her name is on the register, and my mother knew her well. She was mysterious then, and I think my mother got into her power. But of that I am not certain. Anyhow, Edith and I adore her, don't we, Edie? She laid her hand affectionately on her sister's arm. Edith Dallas did not speak, but her face was careworn. After a time, she said slowly, Madame Sara is uncanny and terrible. There is, perhaps, no business imaginable, not even a lawyer's, that engenders suspicions more than mine. I hate all mysteries, both in person and in things. Mysteries are my natural enemies. I felt now that this woman was a distinct mystery. That she was interested in me, I did not doubt, perhaps because she was afraid of me. The rest of our voyage passed pleasantly enough. The more I saw of Mrs. Selby and her sister, the more I liked them. They were quiet, simple, and straightforward. I felt sure that they were both as good as gold. We parted at Waterloo, Jack and his wife and sister going back to Jack's house in Square, and I returning to my quarters in St. John's Wood. I had a house there with a long garden, the bottom of which was my laboratory. The laboratory was the pride of my life, it being, I fondly considered, the best private laboratory in London. There I spent all my spare time making experiments and trying this chemical combination and the other, living in hopes of doing great things one day, for Werner's agency was not to be the end of my career. Nevertheless, it interested me thoroughly, and I was not sorry to get back to my commercial commitments. The next day, just before I started to go to my place of business, Jack Shelby was announced. "I want you to help me," he said. "I've been already trying in some general way to get information on my brother-in-law, but all in vain. There is no such person in any of the directories. Can you put me on the road to discovery?" I said I could, and would, if he would leave the matter in my hands. "With pleasure," he replied. "You see how we are all fixed up? Neither Eustace nor Meade can get money with any regularity until this man is found. I cannot imagine why he hides himself." "I will insert advertisements in the personal columns of the newspapers," I said, "and request anyone who can give information to communicate me with in my office. I also give instruction to all the branches of my firm, as well as the head assistants in London, to keep their eyes open for any news. You may be quite certain that in a week or two we shall know all about it." Shelby appeared cheered at this proposal, and having begged for me to call upon his wife and sister as soon as possible, took his leave. That very day, advertisements were drawn up and sent to several newspapers and inquiry agents. But week after week passed without the slightest result. Selby had gotten very fidgety at the delay. He was never happy except in my presence, and insisted on my coming whenever I had time to his house. I was glad to do so, for I took both interest in him and his belongings, and as to Madame Sara, I could not get her out of my head. One day Mrs. Selby said to me, "Have you ever been to see Madame? I know she would like to show you her shop and general surroundings." "I did promise to call upon her," I answered, "but have not had time to do so yet." "Will you come with me tomorrow morning?" She turned red as she spoke, and the worried, uneasy expression became more marked on her face. I'd noticed for some time that she had been looking both nervous and depressed. I'd first observed the peculiarity about her toward the castle, but as time went on, instead of lessening, it grew worse. Her face was so far a young woman, was haggard. She started at each sound, and Madame Sara's name was never spoken in her presence without her evincing almost undue emotion. "Will you come with me?" she said with great eagerness. I immediately proposed, and the next day, about 11 o'clock, Edith Dallas and I found ourselves handsome driving to Madame Sara's shop. We reached it in a few minutes and found an unpretentious little place, wedged between a hosier's on one side and a cheap print seller's on the other. In the windows of the shop were pyramids of perfume bottles, scintillating facet stoppers tied with colored ribbons. We stepped inside the shop, and there were a couple of steps which led to a door of solid mahogany. "This is the entrance to her private house," said Eustace. She pointed to a small brass plate on which was engraved the name, Madame Sara, Parfumuse. Edith touched an electric bell at the door. It was immediately opened by a smartly dressed page boy. He looked at Miss Dallas as if he knew her very well, and said, "Madame is within, and is expecting you." He ushered us both into a quiet-looking room, soberly but handsomely furnished. He left us, closing the door. Edith turned to me. "Do you know where we are?" she asked. "We're standing at present in a small room just behind Madame Sara's shop," I answered. "Why are you so excited, Miss Dallas? What is the matter with you?" "We are on the threshold of a magician's cave," she replied. "We shall soon be face to face with the most marvelous woman in the whole of London." There's no one like her. And fear her? I said, dropping my voice to a whisper. She started, stepping back. With great difficulty recovered her composure. At that moment the page boy returned, conducted us through a series of small waiting rooms. We found ourselves in the presence of the madam herself. "Ah," she said with a smile. "This is delightful. You have kept your word, Edith, and I am greatly obliged to you. I will now show Mr. Drew some of the mysteries of my trade. But understand, sir," she added, "that I shall not tell you any of my real secrets, only that you should like to know something about me, you shall." How can I tell who I should like to know about you? She gave me an earnest glance which somewhat astonished me. Then she said, "Knowledge is power. Don't refuse what I am willing to give. Edith, will you not object to waiting here while I show Mr. Drews through my rooms? First observe this room, Mr. Drews. It is lighted only from the roof. When the door shuts, it automatically locks itself, so that any intrusion from without is impossible. This is my sanctum sanctorum." A faint odor of perfumes persuades the room. It's a hot day, but the room itself is cool. What do you think of it all? I made no answer. She walked to the other end and motioned me to accompany her. There stood a polished oak square table, on which lay an array of extraordinary-looking articles and implements. Stoppered bottles, full of strange medicaments, mirrors, plane and concave, brushes, sprays, sponges, delicate needle-pointed instruments of bright steel, tiny lancets and forceps. Facing this table was a chair, like those used by dentists. Above the chair hung electric lights and powerful reflectors and lenses like bull-eye lanterns. Another chair, supported on a glass pedestal, was kept there. Madame Sara informed me for administering static electricity. There were dry cell batteries for the continuous currents and induction coils for the faradic currents. There were also platinum needles for burning out the roots of hairs. Madame took me from this room into another, where a still more formidable array of instruments were to be found. Here were a wooden operating table, and chloroform, and ether apparatus. When I looked at everything, she turned to me. "Now you know," she said, "I am a doctor, perhaps a quack. There are my secrets. By these means I live and flourish." She turned her back on me and walked into the other room with the lights, springy step of youth. Edith Dallas, white as a ghost, was waiting for us. "You have done your duty, my child," said Madame. "Mr. Drews has just seen what I want him to see. I am very much obliged to you both. We shall meet tonight at Lady Farrington's, at home. Oh, then, farewell." When we got back into the street and were driving again to the square, I turned to Edith. "Many things puzzle me about your friend," I said. "Perhaps none more than this. By what possible means can a woman who brings the possessor of a shop obtain an entire to some of the best houses in London? Why does society open her doors to this woman, Mrs. Dallas?" "I cannot tell you," was her reply. "I only know the fact that wherever she goes she is welcome and treated with consideration. Wherever she fails to appear, there is universally expressed feelings of regret." I had also been invited to Lady Farrington's reception that evening. In a state of great curiosity. There was no doubt that Madame was interested in me. I was not sure of her. Beyond doubt, there was a mystery attached to her, and also, for some unaccountable reason, she wished both to propitiate and defy me. Why was this? I arrived early and was standing in the crush near the head of the staircase when Madame was announced. She wore the richest white satin and quantities of diamonds. I saw her hostess bend towards her and talk eagerly. I noticed Madame reply, the pleased expression across Lady Farrington's face. A few minutes later, a man with a foreign-looking face and long beard sat down before the grand piano. He played a light prelude, and Madame Sara began to sing. Her voice was sweet and low, with an extraordinary pathos in it. It was the sort of voice that penetrates the heart. There was an instant pause as the gate chattered. She sang amongst the perfect silence. When the song had come to an end, there followed a furor of applause. I was just turning to say something in earnest to my neighbor, observed Edith Dallas, who was standing close by. Her eyes met mine, and she laid a hand on my sleeve. "This room is hot," she said, half panting as she spoke. "Take me out on the balcony." I did so. The atmosphere of the reception room was almost intolerable. It was comparatively cool in the open air. "I must not lose sight of her," she said suddenly. "Of whom?" I asked, somewhat astonished with her words. "Of Sara." "She's there," I said. "You can see her from where you stand." We happened to be alone. I came a little closer. "Why are you afraid of her?" I asked. "Are you sure that we shall not be heard?" was her answer. "Certain." "She terrifies me," were her next words. "I will not betray your confidence, Miss Dallas. You do not trust me. You ought to give me a reason for your years." "I cannot, dare not. I've said far too much already. Don't keep me, Mr. Dress. She must not find us together." As she spoke, she pushed her way through the crowd, and before I could stop her, was standing by Madame Sara's side. The reception in Portland Place was, I remember, on the 26th of July. 2 days later, the Selbys were to give their final at-home before leaving the country. I was, of course, invited to be present. I was also there. She never had been dressed more splendidly, nor had she ever before looked younger and more beautiful. Wherever she went, eyes followed her. As a rule, her dress was simple, almost like what a girl would wear, but tonight she chose rich oriental stuffs, made of many colors, and absolutely glittering with gems. Her golden hair was studded with diamonds. Round her neck she wore turquoise and diamonds mixed. There were many younger women in the room, but not the youngest nor the fairest had a chance beside her. It was not mere beauty of appearance, it was charm which carries all before it. I saw Miss Dallas, looking slim and tall, pale, standing at a little distance. I made my way to her side. Before I had time to speak, she bent towards me. "Is she not divine?" she answered. "She bewilders and delights everyone. She is taking London by storm." "Then you're not afraid of her tonight, is it?" "I fear her more than ever. She's cast a spell over me, but listen, she's going to sing it again." I had not forgotten the song the madam had given us, the farm music. I stood still to listen. There was a complete hush in the room. A voice floated over the heads of the assembled guests in a dreamy Spanish song. Edith told me that it was a slumber song, and that it boasted the power of putting almost anyone to sleep who listened to her rendering notes. "She has passed many patients who suffer from insomnia," she answered. "She generally cures them with that song. We must not talk. She will hear us." Before I could reply, Selby came up. He had not noticed Edith and caught me by the arm. "Come just for a minute into this window, Dixon," he said. "I must speak to you. I have no news with regard to the brother-in-law." "Not a word," I answered. "To tell you the truth, I'm getting terribly put over the matter. We cannot settle any of our business affairs because this man chooses to lose himself. My wife's lawyers wired the Brazil yesterday. Not even his bankers know anything about it." "The whole thing is a question of time," was my answer. "When are you off to Hampshire?" "Saturday." As Selby said the last words, he looked around him. Then he dropped his voice. "I want to say something else. The more I see you," he nodded towards Madame Sara, "the less I like her. Edith is getting into a very strange state. Have you not noticed it? And the worst of it all is my wife is also infected. As a person is a dodge, the woman is practicing people up, making them beautiful. Doubtless the temptation is overpowering in the case of a plain woman. Beatrice, as beautiful as she is, young, what can she have to do with cosmetics and complexion pills? You don't mean to tell me that your wife has consulted Madame Sara as a doctor? Not exactly, but she has gone to her about her teeth. She complained of toothache, and Madame's dentistry is renowned. Edith is constantly going to her for one thing or another, but then Edith is infatuated. As Jack said the last words, he went over to speak to someone else. Before I could leave the seclusion of the window, I perceived Edith Alice and Madame Sara in earnest conversation with each other. I could not help overhearing the following words. Don't come to me tomorrow. Get into the country as soon as you can. It's far and away the best thing to do. Hey, Matsu. As Madame spoke, she turned swiftly and caught my eye. She bowed, and the peculiar look, the sort of challenge she had before me, just flashed over her face. I made her uncomfortable, and during the nights, I followed if I could not get it out of my head. I remembered what Selby had said with regard to his wife and her money affairs. Beyond doubt, he had married into a mystery that Madame Sara knew all about. It's a very big money interest, and strange things happen when millions are concerned. The next morning I had just risen, was sitting at breakfast when a note was handed to me. It came by a special messenger and was marked urgent. I tore it open, and these were the contents. Dear Messenger, a terrible blow is from us. My sister-in-law Edith was suddenly taken ill this morning at breakfast. The nearest doctor was sent for, but he could do nothing. She died half an hour ago. Do come and see me, and if you know any clever specialist, bring him with you. My wife is utterly stunned by the shock. Yours, Jack Selby. I read the note twice before I could realize what it meant. Then I rushed out and hailed the first hansom I met. Said to the man, drive to number 192 Victoria Street as quickly as you can. Here lived an old friend of mine, Mr. Eric Vandeleur, police surgeon from the Westminster district, which concluded Eaton Square. No shrewder or sharper fellow existed in Vandeleur, and his presence case was essentially in his province, both legally and professionally. He was not at his flat when I arrived, passing down that street. Here I accordingly hurried, and was informed that he was just in the mortuary. For a man who, as it seemed to me, lived in a perpetual atmosphere of crime and violence, death and coroner's courts, his habitual cheerfulness and frightfulness was a matter of remarkable. Perhaps it was only the reaction from his work, for he had the reputation of being one of the most astute experts of the day in medical jurisprudence, and the most skilled analyst in toxicology cases in the Metropolitan Police staff. Before I could send him word that I wanted to see him, I heard a bang at the door. Vandeleur came hurrying down the passage, putting his coat on and runched along. "Hello," he cried. "I haven't seen you for ages. Do you want me?" "Yes, very urgently," I answered. "Are you very busy?" "Head over ears, my dear chap. I cannot give you a moment now, but perhaps later on." "What is it? You look excited." "I have to go to Eaton Square like the wind, but come along if you like, and tell me on the way." "Capital," I cried. "The thing has been reported, then. Are you going to Mr. Selby's at number 34A? Then I'm going with you." He looked at me in amazement. "But the case has only just been reported. What can you possibly know about it?" "Everything. Let's take this hansom, and I will tell you as we go along." As we drove to Eaton Square, I quickly explained the situation, glancing now and then at Vandeleur's bright, clean-shaven face. He was no longer Eric Vandeleur, the man with the latest club store, the merry twinkle in his blue eyes. He was Vandeleur, the medical jurist, with a face like a mask, with lower jaw slightly protruding, features very fixed. "This thing promises to be serious," he replied as I finished, "but I can do nothing until after the autopsy. Here we are, and there is my man waiting for me. He has been very smart." On the steps stood an official-looking man in uniform, loose-sleeved. "Coroner's officer," explained Vandeleur. We entered the silent, darkened house. Selby was standing in the hall. He came to meet us. I introduced him to Vandeleur, and he at once led us to the dining room, where we found Dr. Osborne, who Selby had called when the alarm of Edith's illness had been first given. Dr. Osborne was a pale, undersized young man, his face expressionless, with considerable alarm. Vandeleur, however, managed to put him completely at his ease. "I will go over and have a chat with you in a few minutes, Dr. Osborne," he said. "But first I must get Mr. Selby's report. Will you please tell us, sir, exactly what occurred?" "Certainly," he answered. "We had a reception here last night, and my sister-in-law did not go to bed until early morning. She was in bad spirits, but otherwise her usual health. My wife went into her room after she was in bed, and told me later on that she had found Edith in hysterics, and could not get her to explain anything. We both talked about her going to the country without delay. Indeed, our intention was to get off this very afternoon." "Well," said Edward, "we had breakfast about 9:30, and Miss Dowes came down, looking quite her usual health and apparently good spirits. She ate with appetite, and, as it happened, she and my wife were both helped with the same dish. The meal had come to an end when she jumped from the table and uttered a sharp cry, turned very pale, and pressed her hand to her side, and ran out of the room. My wife immediately followed her. She came back again in a minute or two, said that Edith was in violent pain, and begged me to send for a doctor. Dr. Osborne lives round the corner. He came at once, but she died almost immediately after his arrival." "You were in the room?" Vandeleur turned to Osborne. "Yes," he replied. "She was conscious the last moment and died suddenly." "Did she tell you anything?" "No, except to assure me that she did not eat any food that day, that she had come down to breakfast. After the death occurred, I sent immediately to report the case, locked the door to the room where the poor girl's body is, and saw also that nobody touched anything on the table." Vandeleur rang the bell, and the servant appeared. He gave quick orders. The entire remains of the meal were collected and taken charge of. Then he and the coroner's office went upstairs. We were almost alone. Selby sank into a chair. His face was quite drawn, haggard. "The horrible suddenness of last thing is so appalling," he cried. "As to Beatrice, I don't believe she will ever be able to see the same. She was deeply attached to Edith. Edith was nearly 10 years her senior, and always acted the part of a mother to her. It's a sad beginning to our lives. I can scarcely think collectedly." I remained with him a little longer, and then Vandeleur returned. We went back to my own house. There I could settle nothing. And then Vandeleur rang me up at a telephone at about 6 o'clock. I hurried off to his rooms. As soon as I arrived, I saw that Selby was with him. The expression on both their faces told me the truth. "This is bad business," said Vandeleur. "Mrs. Dallas died from swallowing poison. Exhaustive analysis and examination have been made, and powerful poison, unknown to European toxicologists, was found. This is strange enough, but how it has been administered is a puzzle. I confess at the present moment all are not nonplussed. It certainly was not in the remains of the breakfast, and we have her dying evidence that she took nothing else. Now, a poison with such appalling potency would take effect immediately. It is evident that she was quite well when she came down to breakfast, and that the poison began to work towards the close of the meal. But how did she get in it? This question, however, I shall deal with later on. The more immediate point of this, the situation is a serious one in view of the momentary issues and the value of a lady's life. From the aspects of her case, her undoubted sanity and her affection with her sister, many exclude the idea of suicide. We must therefore call it murder. This harmless, innocent lady is struck down in the hand of an assassin with such devilish cunning that no trace or clue was left behind. For such an act there must have been some powerful motive. The person who designed and executed it must be a criminal of the highest order of scientific ability. Mr. Selby has been telling me of the exact financial position of the poor lady, and also of his young wife. The absolute disappearance of the stepbrother, in view of his previous character, the highest degree strange. Knowing as we do that between him and 2 million sterling, there stood 2 lives. One has been taken. A deadly sensation of cold seized me as Vancouver uttered those last words. I glanced at Selby. His face was colorless, and the pupils of his eyes were contracted, as though he saw something which terrified him. What happened once may happen again, said I. We're in the presence of a great mystery, and I counsel you, Mr. Selby, to guard your wife with the utmost care. These words falling from a man of Edward's position and authority on such matters were sufficiently shocking for me to hear, but for Selby to be given such a solemn warning about his young and beautiful, newly married wife, who was all the world to him, was terrible indeed. He leant forward in hands. Mercy on us, he uttered. Is this a civilized country when death can walk abroad like this, invisible, not to be avoided? Tell me, Miss Fenton, what can I do? It must be guarded by me. Believe me, there is no witchcraft in the world. I shall place a detective in your household immediately. Don't be alarmed. We will come to you in plain clothes and will simply act as servants. Nevertheless, you will do... Nevertheless, nothing can be done to your wife without his knowledge. As you, Bruce, continued looking at me, the police are doing all they can to find this man, Silver, and I ask you to help them with your big agency and to begin at once. Leave your friend to me. Wire instantly if you hear any news. You rely on me, I said. A moment later, I had left the scene. As I walked rapidly down the streets and thought of Madame Sara, her shop, and her mysterious background, its surgical instruments, its operating table, its induction coils came back to me. And yet, what could Madame Sara have to do with the present strange, inexplicable mystery? The thought had scarcely crossed my mind before it had clattered along the curb. Turning around, I saw a smart open carriage drawn by a pair of horses standing there. I also heard my own name. I turned. Bending out of the carriage was Madame Sara. I saw you going by, Mr. Druce. I've only just heard the poor news about poor Elizabeth. I'm terribly shocked and upset. I've been to the house, but they would not admit me. Have you heard what was the cause of her death? Madame's blue eyes filled with tears as she spoke. I am not at liberty to disclose what I have heard, since I am officially connected with the affair. Her eyes narrowed, the brimming tears dried as though by magic. Her glance became scornful. Thank you, she answered. Your reply tells me that she did not die naturally. How very appalling. But I must not keep you. Can I drive you anywhere? No, thank you. Goodbye, then. She made a sign to the coachman, and the carriage rolled away, turning to look back at me. Her face wore a defiant expression I had not seen. Could she have been connected with the affair? The thought came upon me with a violence that seemed almost conviction, but I had not reason for it. None. To find Henry Joachim Silva was now my principal thought. Advertisements were widely circulated. My staff had instructions to make every possible inquiry. Large money rewards, some incitements. The collateral branches of other agencies throughout Brazil were communicated with by cable, and all of Scotland Yard channels were used. Still, there was no result. Newspapers took up the case. There were paragraphs in most of them with regard to the missing stepbrother and to the mysterious death of Edith Dallas. Then someone got hold of the story of the will. This was retailed with many additions for the benefit of the public. At the inquest, the jury returned the following verdict. We find that Miss Edith Dallas died from taking poison of unknown name, but by whom or how administered, there is no evidence to say. This unsatisfactory state of things was destined to change quite suddenly. On the 6th of August, as I was seated at my office, a note was brought to me by a private messenger. It read as follows. Norfolk Hotel, Strand. Yes, sir. I have just arrived in London from Brazil, and have seen your advertisements. I was about to insert one myself in order to find the whereabouts of my sisters. I am a great invalid and unable to leave my room. Can you come to see me at the earliest possible moment? Yours, Henry Joachim Silva. In uncontrollable excitement, I hastily dispatched 2 telegrams, one to Selby and the other to Ben, begging them to come with me, without fail, as soon as possible. So the man had never been in England at all. The situation was more bewildered than ever. One thing, at least, was probable. Edith Dallas' death was not due to her stepbrother. Soon after 6:30, Selby arrived. Bendler walked in 10 minutes later. I told him that it occurred and showed them a letter. In half an hour's time, we reached the hotel, and on stating who we were shown into a room on the first floor where Silva's private servant. Resting in an armchair as window sat a man. His face was terribly thin. His eyes and cheeks were so sunken that the face had almost appeared like a skull. He made no effort to rise when we entered, and glanced from us to the other in the utmost astonishment. I at once introduced myself and explained who we were. He waved his hand for his man to retire. You have heard the news, of course, Mr. Silva, I said. News? What? He glanced up at me and seemed to read something in my face. He started back in his chair. Good heavens, he replied. It's my sisters. Tell me quickly, are they alive? Your elder sister died on the 29th of July, and there is every reason to believe that her death was caused by foul play. I uttered these words. The charge passed over his face was fearful to witness. He did not speak, but remained motionless. His claw-like hands clutched the arms of the chair. His eyes were fixed and staring, as though they would start from their hollow sockets, the color of his skin like clay. I heard Selby breathe quickly behind me, and Vandeleur stepped towards the man and laid his hand on his shoulder. Tell us what you know in this matter, he said sharply. Recovering himself to the facts, the invalid began in a tremulous voice. Listen closely, for you must act quickly. I am indirectly responsible for my fearful thing. My life has been wild and wasteful, and now I am dying. Doctors tell me I cannot live a month, for I have a large aneurysm in my heart. 18 months ago, I was in Rio. I was living fast and gambling heavy. Among my fellow gamblers was a man much older than myself. His name was Jose Arano. He was, if anything, a greater gambler than I. One night we played alone. The stakes ran high until they reached a big figure. By daylight I had lost to him nearly £200,000. Though I am a rich man, point to income under my uncle's will, I could not pay him a 20th part of that sum. This man knew my financial position, and in addition to the sum of £5,000 down, I gave him a document. I must have been mad to do so. The document was this. It was duly witnessed and attested by a lawyer. That in the event of my surviving 2 sisters, thus inheriting my uncle's vast wealth, $500,000 should go to Jose Arano. I felt I was breaking up at the time, and the chances of my inheriting the money were small. Immediately after the completion of the documents, this man left Rio, and then I heard a great deal about him I had not previously known. He was a man of queer antecedents, partly Indian, partly Italian. He had spent many years of life among the Indians. I heard also that he was a cruel and was clever, possessed some wondrous secrets of poisoning unknown to the West. I thought a great deal about this, for I knew that by signing this document, I was placed their lives, my 2 sisters, between him and a fortune. I came to Paris 6 weeks ago, only to learn that my sisters had married and had both gone to England. Ill as I was, I determined to follow them in order to warn them. I also wanted to arrange matters with you, Mr. Selby. One moment, sir, I broke in suddenly. Do you happen to be aware of this man, Jose Araccio, you woman calling herself Madame Sara? You heard, cried Silver. Very well indeed, and so, for that matter, did I. Rondo and Madame Sara were the best friends, almost met. She called herself a provincial beautiful. She's very well handsome and had secrets of the pursuing her trade unknown even to Rondo. Good heavens, I cried. And the woman is now in London. She returned here with Mrs. Selby and Miss Dallas. Edith was very much influenced by her and was constantly with her. There's no doubt in my mind that she is guilty. I've suspected her for some time, but I could not find a motive. Now the motive appears. You surely can have her arrested. Vandeleur made no reply. He gave me a strange look, then he turned to Selby. Has your wife also consulted Madame Sara? He asked sharply. Yes, she went to her once about her teeth. She has not been to the shop since Eden's death. I begged her not to see her, but she promised me faithfully that she would not do so. Has she any medicines or lotions given to Madame Sara? Does she follow any line of treatment advised by her? No, I'm certain on that point. Very well, I will see your wife tonight in order to ask her some questions. You must both leave town at once. Go to your country home and settle there. I'm quite serious when I say that Mrs. Shelby is in the most possible danger until the death of her brother. You must leave now, Mr. Silver. All business affairs must wait for the present. It's absolutely necessary that Mrs. Sullivan should leave London at once. Good night, sir. I shall give myself to the pleasure of calling on you tomorrow. We took leave of the sick man. As soon as we got to the street, Vandeleur stopped. I must leave it to you, sir, to judge how much of this matter you will tell your wife. Were I you, I would explain everything. Time for immediate action has arrived. She is a brave, sensible woman. From this moment, you must watch all foods and liquids she takes. She must never be out of your sight or out of the sight of some other trustworthy companion. I shall, of course, watch my wife myself. But the thing is enough to drive one mad. I'll go to the country, Selby. Ah, but that is the best thing possible. What I wanted to propose. Go, all of you, by the early train tomorrow. As I was turning away, Vandeleur caught my arm. I'm glad you were with me, he said. I shall write you tonight's instructions. Never be without a loaded revolver. Good night. By 6:15 the next morning, Selby, his wife, and I were in reserved, locked, first-class compartments, speeding rapidly west. The servants and Miss Selby's own special maid were in a separate carriage. Selby's face showed signs of sleepless night, presenting striking contrast to the fair, fresh face of the girl when the strange battle raged. Her husband had told her everything, though suffering terribly from the shocking grief of her sister's death. Her face was calm and full of repose. The carriage was waiting for us at Crossmoor. By half the time, past 9, we arrived at the old home of the Selbys, desolate amidst the oaks and elms. Everything was done to make a homecoming of the bride, as cheerful as circumstances would permit, but gloom, impossible to lift, overshadowed Selby himself. He could scarcely rouse himself to take the slightest interest in anything. The following morning I received a letter from Vandeleur. It was very short, and once more impressed on me the necessity of caution. It said that 2 eminent physicians had examined Silva. The verdict was that he could not live a month. So his death precautions must be strictly observed. The day was cloudless. After breakfast, I was just starting out for a stroll when the butler brought me a telegram. I tore it open. It was from Vandeleur. Rapid all food until I arrived. Coming down. I hurried into the study and gave it to Selby. He read it and looked up at me. Find out the first train and go and meet them, old chap, he said. Let us hope that this means end to this hideous affair. I went into the hall and looked up to the trains. Next arrived at Crossmoor at 10:45. I then strolled around the stables and ordered a carriage, after which I walked up and down on the drive. There was no doubt that something strange had happened. Vandeleur coming down so suddenly must mean a final clearing of the mystery. I just turned round when the village gates to open the carriage when the sound of wheels and horses galloping struck my ears. The gates were swung open, and Vandeleur, in an open flight, dashed through them. Before I could recover from my surprise, he was out of the vehicle and by my side, carrying a small bag in his hand. "I came down by special train," he said. "There's not a moment to lose. Come at once. Is Miss Shelby all right?" "What do you mean?" I replied. "Of course she is. Do you suppose that she's in danger?" "Danger," was the answer. "Come." We dashed up to the house together. Selby, who had heard the steps, came to meet us. "Mr. Vandeleur," he cried. "What is it? How did you come?" "A special train, Mr. Selby. I want to see your wife at once. It will be necessary to perform a very trifling operation." "Operation?" "Yes, once." We made our way through the hall and into the morning, for Miss Selby was busily engaged in reading and answering letters. She started up when she saw Vandeleur and uttered an exclamation of surprise. "What has happened?" Vandeleur went up and took her by the alarm, he said, "for I have come to put all your fears to rest. Now please listen to me. When you visited Madame Sara with your sister, did you go for medical advice?" A color rushed into her face. "One of my teeth aches, she said. I went to her about that. She is, I suppose you know, a most wonderful dentist. She examined the tooth and found that it required stopping, and got an assistant, a Brazilian, I think, to do that." "And your tooth has been comfortable ever since?" "Yes, quite. She had one of Edith's stopped at the same time." "Will you kindly sit down and show me which was the tooth into which the stopping was put?" So she did. "This one wasn't," she said, pointing at the finger. "What do you mean? Is anything wrong?" Vandeleur examined the tooth long and carefully. There was a sudden rapid movement of his hand, a sharp cry from the silver. With the deftness of long practice, a powerful twist, he had extracted the tooth with one wrench. The suddenness of the whole thing, startling as it was not so strange as his next move. "Send Mrs. Selby's maid to her," he said, turning to the household. "Then come, both of you, into the next room." The maid was summoned. Poor Mrs. Selby had sunk back into the chair, terrified and half fainting. A moment later, Selby joined us in the dining room. "That's right," said Vandeleur. "Close the door, will you?" He opened his black bag and brought out several instruments. With one, he removed the stopping of the tooth. It was quite soft, and came away easily. Then from the bag he produced a small guinea pig, which he requested me to hold. He pressed the sharp instrument into the tooth, and opening the mouth of the little animal, placed the point on the tongue. The effect was instantaneous. The little head fell onto one of my hands. The guinea pig was dead. Vandeleur was white as a sheet. He hurried up to Selby on his hands. "Thank heaven," he cried. "I've been just in time, but only just. Your wife is safe. This stopping could have held another hour. I've been thinking all night over the mystery of your sister's last death, and over every minute detail of evidence as to how the poison could have come and administered. Suddenly, the coincidence of both sisters having had their teeth stopped struck me remarkably. Like a flash, the solution came to me. The more I considered it, the more I felt that I was right. By what fiendish conniving such a scheme could have been conceived and executed is still beyond power to explain. Poison is very like hydrogen, one of the most toxic alkaloids known. So violent in its deadly proportions that the amount that would go into a tooth would cause almost instant death. It's been kept in by the Goethe shop, certain to come within a month, possibly sooner, most probably during the mastication of food. The person would die either immediately or after a very few minutes, and no one would be connected with them. What followed can be told in a very few words. Madame Sara was arrested on suspicion. She appeared before the magistrate, looking innocent and beautiful, and managed during her evidence completely to baffle that accused individual. She denied nothing, but declared that the poison must have been put in the tooth by one of the two Brazilians, whom she had lately engaged to help her with her dentistry. She had her suspicions with regard to those two men soon after and dismissed them. She believed that they were in the pay of Jose Arano, but she could not tell anything for certain. Thus Madame escaped conviction. I was certain that she was guilty, but there was no shadow of real proof. A month later, Silva died. Selby is now. Okay, that one was actually in the Rivals of Sherlock Holmes. Remember it. Okay. And that story took me over. I'm not going to be able to get through all of this. Guilty was definitely having fun with the sounds. Go ahead and run ads just to hopefully get them out of the system. I should still be doing the case for ads instead of voicemails. Nope. Full screen. Damn it. Guess I have another window open while I'm watching. As soon as I talked about her being a dentist, I was like, oh, wait, I know this story. I didn't say it. I wonder why all three stories are listed there. She actually showed them. There's a little fact that she said it was her Sanctus Sanctorum. Yep, Madame Sara is a something too. That's pretty much Madame Sara versus Sticks and Roots. It's a story. Yeah. So I hope everyone's having a good night. So, in less than 4 seconds. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So, poison and dental filling. Not just for secret agents. You know, everyone talks about the CIA and FBI agents having chloroform. That's kind of the same thing that was going on here. But it was time delayed, essentially. If she had just chewed something harder, it could have broken sooner. Madam Sara got off anyway. She lives to be criminal nowadays. I guess in that respect, she's kind of an irony. Anyway. Story 2. Blood-Red Cross. In the month of November of the year 1899, I found myself guest in the house of one of my oldest friends, George Rowan. This beautiful place in Yorkshire was an ideal holiday resort. It went by the name of Rowan's Folly and had been built on the site of a former dwelling in the reign of George. The house was now replete with every modern luxury. It, however, very nearly cost its first owner the whole of his fortune. Yet, the most precious heirloom of the family. This was a pearl necklace of almost fabulous value. It had been secured as booty by a certain Geoffrey Rowland at the time of the Agincourt, and was originally been the property of one of the Dukes of Genoa, and had even been for a short time in keeping with the Pope. From the moment that Geoffrey Rowland took possession of the necklace, there had been several attempts made to deprive him of it. Sword, fire, water, poison, all had been used, but ineffectually. The necklace with its 80 pearls, smooth, symmetrical, pear-shaped, with a translucent white color, and with a subdued iridescent sheen, was seen in possession of the family, and was likely to remain there, as George Rowland told me, until the end of time. Each bride wore the necklace on her wedding day, after which it was put into the strong room and, as a rule, never seen again until the next bridal occasion. The pearls were roughly estimated to be worth from £2,000 to £3,000 each, but the historical value of the necklace put the price almost beyond the dreams of avarice. It was reported that in the autumn of that same year, an American millionaire had offered to buy it from the family at their own price, but as no terms could be listened, the negotiations fell through. George Rowland belonged to the oldest and proudest family in the West Riding. No man looked a better gentleman, more fit to uphold ancient dignities. He was proud to boast that from the earliest days no stain of dishonor had touched his house, that the women of his family were as good as the men, blood pure, and their morals irreproachable. Their ideas. I went to Rowan's Folly in November and found the pleasant, hospitable, and cheerful hostess, Lady Kennedy, Rowan's only sister. Tony Ripley was, however, the center of all interests. Rowland was engaged to Antonia, and the history was romantic. Lady Kennedy told me all about it. She is a penniless girl without family, somewhat snappishly. I can't imagine what George was thinking of. How did your brother meet her? We were both in Italy last autumn. We were staying in Naples at the Vesti. An English lady was staying there with the name of Studley. She died when we were there at the hotel. She had under her charge a young woman, the same Antonia who is now engaged to my brother. Before her death, she begged us to befriend her, saying that the child was without money and without friends. All Miss Studley's money died with her. We promised, not being able to do otherwise. George fell in love almost at the first sight. Little Antonia was provided for my cousin, engaged to my brother. I have nothing to say against the girl, but I dislike this sort of match very much. Besides, she is more foreign than English. Cannot Miss Ripley tell you anything about her history? Nothing except that Miss Studley adopted her when she was a tiny child. She says also that she has a dim recollection of a large building crowded with people, and a man who stretched out his arms to her and was taken forcibly. That is all. She is quite a nice child, amiable, touching in ways with a pathetic face. But no one knows what her ancestry is. There you are, Antonia. What is the matter now? The girl tripped across the room. She was like a young fawn, with a smooth olive complexion, dark of eye and mysteriously beautiful, with a graceful step which is seldom granted. My lace has come, she said. Markham's unpacking it, but the bodice is made with a low neck. Lady Kennedy frowned. You are too absurd, Antonia, she said. Why don't you dress like the other girls? I assure you this peculiarity of yours is always wearing your dress high in the evening annoys George. Does it? She answered, and she stepped back and put her hand to her neck, just below her throat. Constant habit of hers, as I afterwards had occasion to observe. It disturbs him very much, Lady Kennedy said. He spoke to me about it only yesterday. Please understand, Antonia, that at the ball you cannot possibly wear a dress high as your throat. It cannot be permitted. I shall be properly dressed on the night of the ball. Her face grew crimson, deadly pale. But only once a fortnight that time, but I shall be ready. There was a solemnity about her words. She turned. Antonia is a very trying character, said Lady Kennedy. Why won't she act like the other girls? She makes such a fuss about wearing proper evening dress that she tries my patience. But she is all crochets. Sweet little girl, for all that, was my answer. Yes, men like her. Soon afterwards, as I was strolling on the terrace, I met Miss Ripley. She was sitting in a low chair. I noticed how small and slim, young she looked, and how pathetic was her expression on her face. When she saw me, she seemed to hesitate. Then she came to my side. May I walk with you, Mr. Goose? She asked. I'm quite at your service, I answered. Where shall we go? Doesn't matter. I want to know if you will help me. Certainly, if I can, Miss Ripley. It is important. I want to go to London. Surely that is not very difficult. They won't allow me to go alone, and they are both very busy. I've just sent a telegram to a friend. I want to see her. I know she will receive me. I want to go tomorrow. May I venture to ask you if you should be my escort? My dear Miss Ripley, certainly, I said. I will help you with pleasure. It must be done, she said in a low voice. I have put it off too long. When I marry him, he shall not be disappointed. I do not understand you, I said. I will go with you with the greatest willingness. She smiled. The next day, much to my own amazement, I found myself traveling first class up to London, with little Miss Ripley as my companion. Neither Roland nor her sister had approved, but Antonia had her way. In fact, I was escorting her, cleared off some difficulties. During our journey, she bent towards me and said in a low tone, Have you ever heard of the most wonderful, that great woman, Madame Sara? I looked at her intently. I have certainly heard of Madame Sara, I said with emphasis, but I sincerely trust that you have nothing to do with her. I have known her almost my whole life, said the girl. Mrs. Dublin knew her also. I love her very much. I trust her. I'm going to see her now. What do you mean? It was her I wired yesterday. She will receive me. She will help me. I'm returning to the fall tonight. Will you add to your kindness by escorting me home? Certainly. I used to put my charge into a hansom, arranging to meet her at the departing platform at minutes to 6 that evening. Then, taking another hansom, drove as fast as I could to Vandalor's address. During the later part of my journey to town, a sudden, almost unaccountable desire to consult Vandalor had taken possession of me. I was lucky enough to find him at his busiest of men, at home and at leisure. He gave me an exclamation of delight when my name was announced, and when he came towards me with an outstretched hand. "I was just about to worry you, Truce," he said. "From where have you been sprung?" "No less a place than Roland's Folly," was my answer. "Lord, amazing. And you have met Miss Ripley, George Roland's fiancée? Have you heard of the engagement, Reveler?" "I was not. What sort is young lady?" "I can tell you all I want to know, for I have traveled up to town with her." "Aha!" He was silent for a moment, evidently thinking hard. Then, drawing a chair near me, he seated himself. "How long have you been asked to Roland's Folly?" he asked. "Nearly a week. I have to remain until the wedding. I consider Roland a lucky man. He is marrying a sweet little girl." "You think so? By the way, have you noticed any peculiarity about her?" "Oddly, singularly amiable and attractive." "What about habits? Pray think carefully before you answer me." "Really, Bentley, your question surprised me. Little Miss Ripley is a person with ideas, and is not ashamed to stick her principles. You know, of course, that in a house like Roland's Folly it is custom for the ladies to come to dinner in full dress. Now, Miss Ripley won't accommodate herself to the fashion, but will wear a dress high to the throat, however gay or festive occasions." "Ah, there doesn't seem to be much in that, does there?" "I don't quite agree with you. Pressure has been brought on me to bear the girl to make her conform by the usual regulations. And Lady Kennedy, a woman old enough to be her mother, is quite disagreeable. But the girl sticks to her determination?" "Absolutely, although she promises to yield and to wear a conventional dress at the ball given in her honor next week before the wedding." Vandeleur was silent for nearly a minute. Then, dropping his voice, he said low, "Miss Ripley ever mentioned the presence and name?" "How strange you should ask. On our journey to town today, she told me that she knew the woman. She had known her for the greater part of her life. Poor child, she even loves her. Vandeleur, that young girl is with Madame Sara now." "It's shame through there's no immediate danger. But I may as well tell you that through my secret agents I have made discoveries which show that Madame has another iron in the fire. That once again she is preparing to convulse society, and that little Miss Ripley is the victim." "You must be mistaken." "So sure am I that I want your help. You are returning to Roland's Folly tonight, and Miss Ripley, she goes with me. There's 6 o'clock train." "So far, good. By the way, has Roland spoken to you lately about the pearl necklace?" "No. Why do you ask?" "Because I understand that it is his intention to have the pearl slightly altered and set in order to fit Miss Ripley's slender throat. Also, to have a diamond clasp affixed in place of somewhat insecure one with the present attached with strong pearls. Messrs. Theodore and Mark of Bond Street would take the commission, always in preparation. A messenger, accompanied by 2 detectives, was to go to Roland's Folly to fetch the treasure. The whole thing was countermanded. Roland, having changed his mind, had decided that the strong rooms at the Folly were the best place to keep the necklace." "He's not mentioned this of it to me," I said. "How do you know?" "I have emissaries. One thing is certain. Little Miss Ripley is to wear the pearls on her wedding day. The Italian family, distant relatives of the present Duke of Genoa, to whom the pearls had belonged. They were stolen shortly before the Battle of Agincourt, are again taking active steps to secure them. You have heard the story of the American millionaire. Well, that was a blind. The necklace was in reality to be delivered into the hands of the old family as soon as he had purchased it. Now, Druce, this is the state of things. Madame Sara is an adventuress and the cleverest woman in the world. Miss Ripley is very young and ignorant. Miss Ripley is to wear the pearls on her wedding day. Madame wants them. Can you infer the rest? What do you want me to do? I asked. Go back and watch. If you see anything to arouse suspicion, wire to me. What about Tom Rowland? I would rather not consult him. I want to protect Miss Ripley, but at the same time to get Madame into my power. She decided to elude us last time, but she will not this time. My idea is to invade her to her will. Why, Troops? The woman is being more trusted, run after, admired, day by day. She appeals the greatest foibles of the world. She knows how valuable secrets and is adept at the art of restoring beauty to a certain extent, conquering the ravages of time. She is at present aided by an Arab, the most dangerous man I have ever seen, with the subtlety of a serpent, the leader of everyone has seen fingers. It's not an easy thing. And yet you mean to do? Someday perhaps. His eyes were bright. I'd seldom seen him look more excited. After a short time I left him. Miss Ripley met Meade. She was silent and unresponsive, and she looked depressed. Once I saw her put her hand to her neck. "Are you in pain?" I asked. "Might be a doctor, Mr. Druce, from your question." "Answer me," I said. She was silent for a moment, and then she said slowly, "You are good, and I think I ought to tell you. But will you regard this a secret? You wonder perhaps how it is that I don't wear a low dress in the evening. Why, I will tell you. On my throat, just below the throat, there grew a water mole, large, brown, and ugly. The Italian doctors would not remove it on the account of its position. It lies just over what they said was an aberrant artery. The removal might cause very dangerous hemorrhage. One day Madame saw it and said the doctors were wrong, and that she could easily take it away and leave no mark behind. I hesitated for a long time, but yesterday, when Lady Kennedy spoke to me as she did, I made up my mind. I wired to Madame and went to see her today. She gave me chloroform and removed the mole. My neck is bandaged up and it smarts a little. I'm not to remove the bandage until she sees me again. She is very pleased with the result and says that my neck will now be as beautiful like the other women's, and that I can give the night the ball, wear lovely Brussels lace that Miss Kennedy has given me. That is my secret. Will you respect it?" I promised, and soon afterwards we reached the end of our journey. A few days went by. One morning the breakfast center was the little Signora, and we played with her food. An open letter lay by her plate. Roland, by whose side she always sat, turned to her. "What does it matter, Antonia?" he said. "Have you had an unpleasant letter?" "It is from—" "From who, dear?" "Madame Sara." "What did I hear you say?" cried Lady Kennedy. "I have had a letter from Madame Sara, Lady Kennedy." "That shocking woman of the Strand, that adventuress! My dear, is it possible that you know her? Her name is in the mouth of everyone. She is quite notorious." Instantly the room became full of voices, some talking loudly, some gently, but all praising Madame Sara. Even the men took her part. As the women, they were unanimous about her charms and her genius. In the midst of the commotion, little Antonia burst into a flood of tears and left the room. Roland followed after her. What occurred next I cannot tell, but in the course of the morning I met Lady. Well, she said, the child has won, as I knew she would. Madame Sara wishes to come here, and George says that Antonia's friend is to be invited. Thank you, Oni. Madame Sara wishes to come here, and George says that Antonia's friend is to be invited. I shall be glad when the marriage is over and I can get out of this. It is really detestable that in the last days of my reign I should have to give that woman the entree of my house. She left me, and I wandered into the entrance hall. There I saw Roland. He had a telegraph form in his hands, on which he had written words. Ah, Deuce, he said. I'm sending a telegram to the station. What do you want to send to? 1, 2. I was seated myself by the table which held the telegraph forms. No, I don't think I'm taking too great a liberty, he said suddenly. I should like to ask a friend of mine here for a day or 2. 20 friends if you like, my dear Druce. What a man you are to apologize for such a trifle. Who is a special friend? No less a person than Eric Vandeleur, the police surgeon at Westminster. What? Vandeleur, the gayest, jolliest man I've ever met? Would he care to come? Owen's eyes were sparkling with excitement. I think so, more especially if you will give him leave to say what you would welcome him. But tell him to come. We shall have 1,000 welcomes, the best rooms in the house, the best horse. Get him to come by all means, Druce. Our 2 telegrams were sent off, and in the course of the morning replies and the information came to each. That evening Madame Sara arrived, came by the last train. The brougham was sent to meet her. She entered the house shortly before midnight. I was standing in the hall when she arrived. I felt a momentary sense of pleasure when I saw the start in her eyes. But she was not a woman to be caught off her guard. She approached me at once with outstretched hand and eager voice. This is charming, Mr. Druce, she said. I do not think anything pleases me more. Then she added, turning toward Mr. Dixon Druce is a very old friend of mine. Rowan gave me a bewildered glance. Madame turned and began to talk to her hostess. Antonia was standing near one of the open drawing rooms. She had on a soft dress of pale silk. I had seldom seen a more graceful little creature, but the expression on her face disturbed me. It wore now the fascinating look of a bird when a snake attracts it. Could Madame Sara be the snake? Was Antonia afraid of this woman? The next day Lady Kennedy came to me with a confidence. I'm glad your police friend is coming, she said. It will feel safer. Vandeleur arrived at 12 o'clock, was my answer. Well, I am pleased. I like that woman less and less. I was amazed when she dared to call you her friend. Oh, we met before on business, I answered guardedly. Tell me anything further, Mr. Druce? You must excuse me, Lady Kennedy. Her assurance is unbounded. She has brought a maid from nurse with her, a most extraordinary-looking woman. That perhaps is allowable, but she has also brought a black servant, an Arabian. He goes by the name of Ahmed. I must say, he is a picturesque creature with his quaint oriental dress. He is all in flaming yellow this morning. The embroidery on his jacket was worth a small fortune. But his staring of a woman annoys me. She goes on as though she were somebody. She is very emphatic for somebody. London society is at her feet. And I hope that Antonia will take her remedies and let her go. The woman has no welcome for me, is an indignant mistress of Rowan's folly. I did not see anything of Antonia that point in time I went down to the station to meet Neville. He arrived in high spirits, did not ask a question with regard to Antonia, received the information that Madame Sara was in the house with stolid silence, and seemed intent on the pleasures of the moment. Roland's Folly, he said, looking around him, approach of the finest house in the whole of Yorkshire. Folly, truly, yet a pleasant one, true, sir. I fancy. He added with a slight smile, that I am going to have a good time here. I hope you will disentangle the most sanguine scheme. He shrugged his shoulders. Suddenly, his manner altered. Who is that woman? He said, strained anxiety, quite apparent in her voice. The woman asked. The woman on the terrace in nurse's dress. I don't know. She was brought here by Madame Sara, a sort of maid, nurse as well. I suppose poor little Antonia must be put under her charge. Don't let her see me, Troops, that's all. Ah, here is our host. Vandeleur quickened his movements. Next instant, he was shaking hands with Roland. The rest of the day passed without adventure. I did not see Antonia. She did not even appear at dinner. Roland, however, assured me that she was taking necessary rest and would be all right tomorrow. He seemed inclined to be gracious to Madame Sara, and was annoyed at his sister's manner at their guest. Soon after dinner, as I was standing in one of the smoke rooms, I held a light hand on my arm, and turning, countered the splendid pose and audacious, bright, defiant glance of the man himself. Mr. Truce, she said, just for a moment, it is quite right that you and I should be plain with each other. I know the reason why you are here. You have come for the express purpose of spying upon me, and spoiling what you consider my game. But understand, Mr. Truce, that there is danger to yourself when you intervene in the schemes of one like me. Forewarned is forearmed. Someone came into the room. The ball was but a week off. Preparations for a great event were taking place. Attracted to the house at the left, a great room built for this purpose. Roland and I were walking down to this room on a special morning. He was communicating on its architecture, merits, and telling me what band he'd think to have in the musicians' gallery. When Estonia glided into the room. "Oh, pale are you, little Antonia," he said. This was his favorite name for her. He put his hand to her chin, raised her sweet, blushing face, and looked into her eyes. "Ah, you want my answer. What a persistent little puss it is. You shall have your way, Tanya. Yes, certainly. For you I will grant what has never been granted before. All the same, what will my lady say?" He shrugged his shoulders. "But you will let me wear them whether she is angry or not," persisted Antonia. "Yes, my child, I have said it." She took his hand and raised it to her lips, then with a curtsy tripped out of the room. "Rare, bright little bird," he said, turning to me. "You know, I feel that I have done an extraordinarily good thing for myself in securing little Antonia. No troublesome mamma-in-law, no brothers or sisters, not my own and not emphatically mine to consider, just the child herself. I am very happy and a very lucky fellow. I am glad my little girl has no past history. She's just her dear little dainty self, no more and no less." "What did she want with you now?" I asked. "Little witch," he said with a laugh. "The pearls, the pearls. She insists on wearing the great necklace on the night of the ball. Dear little girl. I can fancy how the bambles will gleam and shine on her fair throat." I made no answer, but I was certain that little Antonia's request did not emanate from herself. I thought that I would search for Vandeleur and tell him of the circumstance, but the next remark of Roland's nipped my project in the bud. "By the way, your friend has promised to be back for dinner. He left here early this morning." Vandalur? I cried. Yes, he's gone to town. What a first-rate fellow he is. He tells a good story, I answered. Capital. Who would suspect him of being the greatest criminal expert in the day? But thank goodness we have no need for his services at Roland's Folly. Late in the evening, Vandalur returned. He entered the house just before dinner. I observed with the brightness in his eyes and the tense gravity in his manner that he was satisfied with himself. This case was always a good sign. At dinner he was his brightest self, courteous to everyone, and to Madame Sara in particular. Late that night, as I was preparing to go to bed, he entered my room without knocking. Bruce, it is all right. All right, I cried. What do you mean? You'll soon know. The moment that I saw that woman, I had no suspicions. I was in town today making some interesting inquiries. I am primed now on every point. Expect a denouement of a startling character very soon. But be sure of one thing. However black appearances may be, your little bride is safe. So are the pearls. He left me without waiting for a reply. The next day passed, and the next, and it seemed to live on tenterhooks. Little Antonia was gay and bright like a bird. His invitation had been extended by Lady Kennedy at Roland's demand. Through the day of the ball, the little Antonia skipped when she heard it. I love her, said the girl. More and more guests arrived. The days full of meetings. The evenings were lively. Madame was a power in herself. These two, sworn foes at the hearts, aided and abetted each other to make things go brilliantly for the rest of the guests. Roland was in the highest of spirits. At last, the evening before the ball came and went. Vandalur's grand coup had not come off. I retired to bed as usual. It was a storm. Rain rattled against the window panes, and the wind sighed and shuddered. I had just put out my candle and was about to seek forgetfulness and sleep. Once again, in his unceremoniously fashion, Vandalur burst into my room. I want you at once, Truce, in the bed with Madame Sara's servants. Come into your clothes as fast as you can. Get to join me there. I left the room as abruptly as he had entered it. I hastily dressed with stealthy steps in the dead of the night, to the accompaniment of the ever-increasing tempest, sought the room in question. I found it brightly lighted. Vandalur pacing the floor as though he himself were the very spirit of the storm. The most astonishing sight of all. His nurse, Madame Sara had brought to Roland's Folly, and whose name I had never happened to hear, gagged and bound in a chair, drawn in the center of the room. So I think all nurse, said Vandalur. Pray, take a chair, nurse. We quite understand each other, don't we, nurse? And the facts are wonderfully simple. Your name, as entered in the archives of the crime of Westminster, is not, as you have given out, Mary Jessup, but Rebecca Curt. You escaped from Portland prison on the night of the 30th, just a year ago. You could not have managed your escape, but for the convenience of the lady whose service you were now in. Your crime was forgery, with a strong and very daring attempt at poisoning. Knowledge of crime, therefore. The victim was a harmless invalid lady. Your knowledge of crime, therefore, is what may be extinct. There are yet 11 years of your sentence to run. You have doubtless served Madame Sara well, but perhaps you can serve me better. You know the consequence if you refuse, for I explained that frankly and clearly before this gentleman came into the room. Truce, will you oblige me? Will you lock the door while I remove the gag? I hurried to obey. The woman breathed more freely when the gag was removed. Her face was swarthy red all over. Crooked eyes favored us with many shifty glances. Now then, Have the goodness to begin. Tell us everything you can. She swallowed hard. You forced me. You won't mind that part. The story, please, Miss Hurt. If looks could kill, Rebecca Kurt would have killed me with it. I gave her in return a gentle, bland glance. She started. Madam knows a secret about Antonia Ripley. What nature? It concerns her parentage. And that is. The woman hesitated. The names of her parents, please, said Edward. The voice is cold, hard as iron. Her father was an Italian by birth. His name? Count Giletti. He was unhappily married and stabbed his English wife in excess to jealousy when Antonia was 3 years old. He was executed for his crime on the 20th of June, 18... The child was adopted and taken out of the country to an English lady who was present in court. Her name was Mrs. Dudley. Madame Sara was also present. She was much interested in the trial and had met an interview afterwards with Mrs. Dudley. It was arranged that Antonia should be called by the surname Ripley, the name of an old relative of Mrs. Dudley's, and that her real name and history were never to be told to her. I understand, said Midler. This is of deep interest, is it not, Bruce? I nodded, too much absorbed in watching the face of the woman to have time for words. But now, continued Midler, there are reasons why Madame should change her mind. Secrets. Is that not so, Mrs. Kurt? Yes, said Miss Kurt. You have the kindness to continue. Madame has an object. She blackmails the Signor. She wants to get the Signor completely into her power. Indeed, is she succeeding? Yes. How has she managed? Be careful what you say, please. The mode is settled. The young lady has a disfigured mole or wart on her neck, just below the throat. Madame removed the mole. Quite a simple progress, doubt not, said Lord Carolstone. Yes, it was done easily. I was present. The young lady was conducted right into a chamber with a red light. Wendler's extraordinary eyes suddenly leapt into fire. He took a chair and drew it so close to Miss Kurt's face that his face was within a foot or two of hers. Now, be very careful what you say, you know the consequence yourself, unless this narrative is absolutely reliable. She began to tremble, but continued. I was present at the operation. Not a single ray of ordinary light was allowed to penetrate. The patient was put under cloth. It was removed. Afterwards, Madame wrote something on her neck. Words were very small and neatly done, and formed a cross on the young lady's neck. Afterwards, I heard what they said. Read them. I can't. You will know in the moment of victory. I choose to know now. The detective from my division at Westminster comes here early tomorrow morning. Brings handcuffs and I will tell the rest. Words are these. I am the daughter of Paolo Giletti, who was executed for the murder of my mother, June 20th, 18... How were these words written? With the nitrate of silver. Fiend! He jumped up and began to pace at once. I'd never seen his face so black and unforgivable rage. You know what this means? He said at last to me. Nitrate of silver eats into the flesh and is permanent. Once exposed to the light, in this case, is hopeless. The helpless child becomes her own executioner. The nurse looks up restlessly. The operation was performed in a room with a red light, she said. Up to the point the present words have not been seen. Unless the young lady exposes her neck to the blue rays of ordinary light, they will never be seen. In order to give her a chance to keep her deadly secret, Madame has had a large carbuncle of reddest, deepest red cut and prepared. It is the shape of a cross, suspended in fine gold and almost invisible thread. This is what the signora is to wear in the dress, full evening dress. It will keep in its place, for the cross will be cleaned, dusted, and gum. But it cannot be in the madam's aim to hide the fateful words, said. You are concealing something, nurse. Her face grew red. After a pause, the following words came out with great reluctance. The young lady wears the carbuncle as a reward. Ah, said Meade. Now we are beginning to see daylight. As a reward for... But Madame wants something which the signora can give her. This is the case of exchange. The carbuncle which hides the fatal secret is given in exchange for that which the signora can transfer to Madame. I understand at last. Really, nurse, I feel myself privileged to say that all the malevolent... Never mind, he said. We are keeping the nurse. Nurse, you have answered all my questions with praiseworthy exactitude. But before you return to your well-earned slumber, I have one more piece of information to seek from you. What is entirely by Miss Ripley's desire. Was it in any respect owing to Madame Sara's investigations that the young lady is permitted to wear the pearl necklace on the night of the dance? You have, of course, nurse, heard of the pearl necklace. Rebecca Kurt's face showed that she undoubtedly had. I see you are acquainted with the most interesting story. Now answer my questions. The request to wear the necklace tomorrow night was suggested by Madame, was it not? Yes. Period out. So, in some excitement. It was all the point all else intended. All. That will do. Thank you. You understand from this day you are absolutely in my service. As long as you serve me faithfully. I will do my best, sir, she replied, seeking around. The moment we were alone, and simplified themselves, he said. I fail to understand, was my answer. I should say the complications of alarming ones abound. Nevertheless, I see my way clear, Troops. It is not for you to be so long out of bed. In order that you may repose soundly, return to your room. I will tell you frankly what my mode of operation will be tomorrow. The simplest plan would be to tell Roland everything. For various reasons, it does not suit me. I take an interest in you. She does chooses to conceal her secret. At past, remember, she does not know it. The poor child will certainly be told everything tomorrow. I intend to interfere. In the second place, I am anxious to lay a trap for Madame. Now, two things are evident. Madame Sara's object is coming here to steal the pearls. The plan is to terrify the little signora into giving them to her words, that the fiendish words written on the child's neck may not be seen. As the signora must wear a dress with low neck tomorrow, she can only hide the words by means of the red carbuncle. Madame will only give her the carbuncle if she, in exchange, gives Madame the pearls, you see. You, answered slowly. He drew himself up to a slender height. His eyes became full of suppressed laughter. The child's neck has been injured with nitrate of silver. Nevertheless, until it is exposed to the blue rays of light, the ominous fiendish words will not appear on her white throat. Once they do appear, they will be indelible. Now listen. Madame, with all her cunning, forgot something. To the action of nitrates of silver, there is an antidote. This is nothing more or less than our old friend cyanide of potassium. Tomorrow, nurse, under my instructions, take the little patient to a room, carefully prepared with the aid of red light. Bay of the neck, just where the baleful words are written. It's a solution of high cider. Speaking, I can do it, honestly. Tomorrow, nurse, under my instructions, will take the little patient to the room carefully prepared with the hateful red light. He will bathe the neck just where the baleful words are written. It's a solution of cyanide of potassium. The nitrate of silver will become neutralized, and the letters will never come out. But the child will not know that. The terror of Madame's cruel story upon her. She will exchange the pearls for the cross. I think not, for I shall be there to prevent it. Now, troops, I have told you all that is necessary. Go to bed and sleep comfortably. The next morning dawned dull and sullen, but the fierce storm of the night before was over. The ravages which had taken place, however, in the stately oak park were very manifest, for the trees had been torn up by the roots. Some of the stateliest and largest of the oaks had been deprived of their best branches. Little Miss Ripley did not appear at all that day. I was surprised at her absence. The time had come when doubtless Madame found it necessary to divulge her awful schemes to the unhappy child. Amidst that gay house full of people, no one especially missed her. Even Roland was engaged with many necessary matters, and had little time to devote to his future wife. The ballroom, decorated with real flowers, was a beautiful sight to see. Vandeleur, her host, and I paced up and down. Roland was in great excitement, taking many suggestions, altering his decorations and the other. The flowers were too profuse in one place, too scanty in another. The lights, too, were not bright enough. By all means, have the ballroom well lighted, said the boy. In a room like this, so large, with so many doors heading into the passage and sitting rooms out, it will be possible to have the light as brilliant as possible. You will forgive my suggestion, Mr. Roland, but I may speak entirely from the point of view of a man who has acquaintance with some treacherous dealings. Roland started. Are you afraid that an attempt will be made here tonight to steal the necklace? Asked suddenly. We won't talk of it, replied Vandeleur. Act on my suggestion. You have nothing to fear. Roland shrugged his shoulders, crossed the room, and gave some directions to several men who were putting the final touches. Nearly 100 guests were expected to arrive from the surrounding country. The house was as full as it could possibly hold. Roland was to open the hall with little time. There was no late dinner that day. I say, dress as early as you can. Come down and meet me in our host's study. I looked at him in astonishment and did not question him. I saw that he was intensely excited. His face was cold and stern, and it invariably wore that expression when he was most moved. I hurried into my evening clothes and came down again. Vandeleur was standing in the study talking with Roland. Guests were beginning to arrive. The musicians were tuning up in the adjacent ballroom. Signs of hurried festival pervaded the entire place. Roland was in high spirits and looked very handsome. He and Vandeleur talked together, and I stood a little apart. Vandeleur was just about to make a light reply to one of our host's questions when I heard the swish of drapery in the passage outside. Little Antonia, dressed for her ball, entered. She was in soft white lace, and her neck and arms were bare. The effect of her entrance was somewhat startling. Sort of attention, even where not all were interested. Her face, neck, and arms were nearly as white as her dress. Her dark eyes were much dilated. Her soft black hair had surrounded her face like a shadow. In the midst of the whiteness, a large red cross sparkled on her throat like living fire. Roland uttered an exclamation and stood still. As for Vandeleur and myself, we held our breaths in suspense. That might be the next few minutes revealing. There was a look on Antonia's face that aroused our fears. What ailed her? She came forward like one blind. sleep. One hand was held slightly in advance, though she meant to guide herself by sense of touch. She certainly saw neither Vandelor nor me, but when she got close to Roland, the blind expression left her eyes. She gave a sudden and exceedingly bitter cry and ran forward, flinging herself into his arms.
Kiss me once before we part forever. Kiss me once before we part,
she said. Dear little one, sir, what is the meaning of this? Are you not well? There, Antonia, cease trembling. Before we part, my dear. But there is no thought of parting. Let me look at you, darling. Ah. He held her at arm's length and gazed at her critically. No girl could look sweeter, Antonia, he said. You have come now to the finishing touch, the beautiful pearls. What is this, my dear? Why should spoil your white neck with anything so incurious? Let me remove it. She put up her hand to her neck, thus covering the crimson cross. Then her wild eyes met Vandelor's. She seemed to recognize his presence for the first time. Remove it safely, said to her, speaking in a semi-whisper. Roland gave him an astonished glance. His look seemed to say, leave us, but Vandelor did not move. See this thing out, he said to me. Meanwhile, Roland's arm encircled Antonia's neck. His hand sought for the clasp of the narrow gold thread that held the cross in place.
One moment,
said Antonia. She stepped back a pace. Trembling her voice left it. Gathered strength. Her fear gave way to dignity. This was the hour of her deepest humiliation. Yet, she lived.
My dearest, she said, my kindest and best of friends, I had yielded to temptation. Terror made me weak. Dread of losing you unnerved me. But I won't come to you charged with the same in my conscience. I won't conceal anything from you. I know you won't wish me now to become your wife. Nevertheless, you shall know the truth.
What do you mean, Antonia? What do your strange words signify? Are you mad? Said Lord Roland.
No, I wish I were, but I am no mate for you. I cannot bring dishonor to your honor. Madam said it would be hidden, but at this,
she touched the cross,
would hide it. For this I was to pay, yes, to pay a shameful price. I consented for the terror was so cruel, but I came here and looked into your face, and I could not do it. Madam shall have her blood-red cross back, and you shall know it. You shall see.
With a fierce gesture, she tore the cross from her neck, flung it on the floor.
The pearls were this, she cried. The pearls was her price. But I would rather than you knew. Take me to your brightest light, and you will see for yourself.
Roland's face wore an expression impossible to fathom. The red cross lay there on the floor. Antonia's eyes were fixed on his. She was no child to be humored. She was a woman, and despair was driving her wild. She said,
Take me to your brightest light.
He took her hand without a word and led her with a light, full rays of electric-powered light to the place into day.
Look, cried Antonia. Look, Madam rooted here, here.
She pointed to her throat.
The words are hidden, but the light will soon cause them to appear. You will see for yourself. You will know the truth. At last you will understand who I really am.
She pointed to her throat. There was a silence for a few minutes. Antonia kept pointing. Its eyes were fixed upon it. After a breathless period of agony, Vandelor stepped forward. Miss Antonia, you've suffered enough. I'm in a position to relieve your terrors. You little guess, Roland, that for the last few days I have taken extreme liberty with regard to you. I have been in your house simply and solely in the exercise of my professional qualities. In the excuse of my manifest duties, I came across a ghastly secret. Miss Antonia was to be subjected to cruelty. Madame Sara, for reasons of her own, had invented one of the most fiendish plots it has ever been my happy lot come across. But I have been in time. Miss Antonia need fear nothing. Her neck contains no ghastly secrets. Listen, I have saved you. The nurse whom Madame believed to be devoted to her service considered it best for potential reasons to transfer herself to me. In my direction, she bathed your neck today with the preparation of cyanide of potassium. I do not know what that is, but it is a chemical preparation which neutralizes the effect of what that horrible woman has done. You have nothing to fear. Your secret lies buried beneath your white skin. What was that mystery? Said Ward. Your actions, Antonia, your words, Vandeleur, are enough to drive a man mad. What is it all about? I will know. Miss Ripley can tell you or not, as she pleases, replied Vandeleur. An unhappy child was to be blackmailed, and Sarah's object being to secure the pearl necklace worth the king's ransom. The cross was given in exchange for the necklace. That was what he defeated. Ask me no questions, sir. If this young lady chooses to tell you, well and good. If not, your secret is her own. Vandeleur bowed and back towards me.
The secret is mine, cried Antonia. But it is also yours, George. I will not be your wife with this ghastly thing between us. You may never speak to me again, but you shall know all the truth.
My word, a brave girl. I respect her, whispered Vandeleur. Sometimes our work is far from this Antonia is concerned. This was the finish. We left the room. Now we see Madame Sara, continued my friend. We'll go to her rooms. Walls have ears in her case. She doubtless knows the whole denouement already. But we will have to find her at once. She can scarcely have escaped yet. He flew upstairs, and I followed him. We went from one corridor to another, and at last we found Madame's apartments. Her bedroom door stood wide open. Back of her standing in the corridor. Madame herself was nowhere to be seen, but there was every sign of a hurried departure. It was Madame Sara. Rebecca Kurt shrugged her shoulders. Had she gone down? Is she in the ballroom? Speak! Said Edward. The nurse gave another shrug. I only know that Ahmed the Arabian rushed in here a few minutes ago. Was her answer. He was excited. He said something to Madame, and I think he had been listening, eavesdropping, he called it. Madame was convulsed with rage. She thrust things together, and she's gone. Perhaps you can catch her. Vandeler's face turned white. I'll have a try, he said. Don't keep me, Deuce. He rushed away. I don't know what steps he took, but he did not return his folly. Neither was Madame Sara captured. But notwithstanding her escape, and her meditative crime, notwithstanding little Estonia's hour of terror, the ball went merrily, and the bride-elect opened it with her future husband. On her fair neck gleamed the pearls, lovely, soft luster. What she told Roland was never known. How he took the news as a secret between him, Antonia, and himself. But one thing is certain. No one was more gallant in his conduct, more ardent in his glances of love, as the master of Roland's folly that night. They were married on the day, fixed. Madame Sara was defeated. Ah, those are long stories. And my model froze because a child kidnapping alert popped up that blocks YouTube Studio from working. I'm not sure if I have it in me to read notes. So for now, let's Let's look to see if we can find anyone to raid. Yeah. Meade. That's because they're going to rank. Yeah. I can't believe how much I was stumbling that way. Oh, does anyone have any suggestions? What else did we can find? Let's see. Someone actually has a name or to sleep. What to look like someone's ready to climb me? Ugh. Let's check this. Okay. Then we got here, we got 3. Okay. I'll just read dusk. Follower raid message. Sub raid message. So I will hopefully see you all tomorrow. I do hope you have a wonderful night. And, man, let's stop yawning. Yeah. Have a great evening, great night, or whichever time zone you may exist in. Bye, everyone.